Welcome to PAATH History. Today we are going to discuss about the price revolution in Europe. Europe witnessed phenomenal price rise in the 16th century. Its cumulative impact was so profound that the economic historians have termed it as the price revolution. Price revolution is a term used for a period of prolonged inflation despite occasional dissent in the use of this term. There is general disagreement on the question of the actual beginning of the so-called price revolution. Some scholars believe that it had started from the late 15th century itself, while some others feel it began after 1500. In the Cambridge Economic History of Europe, there is also a suggestion that the 16th century price revolution was preceded by a pre-revolution in prices. It is true that there is a crisis of data to analyze the exact picture of the inflation in Europe. But historians argue that in the 16th century Europe witnessed 1.4% increase of the price of food grains. According to the data mentioned by P. Creed in his Peasants, Landlords and Merchant Capitalists, if we state that in between 1501 and 1510 the price was 100, then in 1600 the price of England, France, Spain and Germany were 425, 615, 376 and 255 respectively. We see different effects on food grains and industrial goods also. The result was as follow. From 1501 to 1510, price of food grains was 106 and price of industrial goods was 98. From 1521 to 1530, price of food grains was 159 and price of industrial goods was 110. From 1541 to 50, the price of food grains was 217 and price of industrial goods was 127. From 1561 to 1570, the price of food grains was 298 and price of industrial goods 218. From 1581 to 1590, price of food grains was 389 and price of industrial goods was 230. And from 1591 to 1600, the price of food grains was 530 and the price of industrial goods was 238. And in this case, the standard rate was 100 in 1451 to 1475. The initial reaction to the price inflation in the 16th century was seen as a creation of individual wickedness. Theologians and preachers made scathing attacks on the monopolists and the users. In England, the rack-renting landlords and grain merchants became the common targets and were blamed for the price rise. Professor Martin de Azpilicueta of Salamanca University suspected a connection between the price rise and increasing availability of bullion. He said that money was scarcer in France than in Spain, and he believed that sellable goods and labor became much cheaper after the discovery of the Indies. Molestroit maintained that the so-called inflation was illusionary, and he compared the prices of the 13th century with those prevalent in the 16th century and found no indication of inflation. He believed that whatever slight increase had taken place was due to the debasement of currency. It is a common fact that many European governments had debased their coinage by reducing the silver content to increase the number of coins. This was done to fetch a better price for the products in the international market and to pay their debts that had been mounting because of the growing expenditure of the luxurious courts. The English government debased its coins first in 1520, then 1546 and 1551. Jean Baudin believed that the currency debasement was an insufficient factor to account for the price rise. He argued that as the rise in food prices was out of all proportion to the extent by which the monies of account had been depreciated, the real reason could only be the influx of American silver. Later, Richard Cantillon and Adam Smith also shared this view. In the 20th century, Earl J. Hamilton on Spain and Ferdinand Brodel on Mediterranean gave this theory historical confirmation. This has come to be known as the quantity theory of money. Hamilton believed that there was a close connection between the imports of American gold and silver and the prices in Andalusia. He observed an upward trend in the prices from 1535 until 1595, which he believed was closely linked to the arrival of treasures from America. After that period, decrease in the import of bullion resulted in the declining trend in prices. Irving Fisher gave a new mathematical basis to the quantity theory when he stated MV equal to PT. This equation states that money supply times its velocity of circulation is equal to the price of goods and services times the number of transactions. Many historians do not fully agree with this view. This theory has been subjected to much attack on empirical as well as on theoretical grounds. Doubts have been frequently expressed whether V and Q remain constant. In a strong criticism of Hamilton, Ingrid Hammerstrom argued that Hamilton had got his sequence wrong. It was an increase in economic activity that led to an increase in prices. Y.S. Brenner also supports Hammerstrom and argues that the changes in the commodity price level were caused less from an increase or lack of increase in the European stock of metal than from the manner in which this stock was employed. Citing the English example, he suggests that the price rise antedated the arrival of American treasure. Historians such as P. Wheeler and George Nadal criticized Hamilton for concentrating only on the town prices and ignoring the rural prices of the local markets. They argue that Hamilton omitted regions like Catalonia and Basque, which were perhaps closer to the European economy than the rest of Spain. They also object to the authenticity of data provided by Hamilton, as it does not indicate the criteria adopted for separating royal income from private income. There is also a doubt over the chronology of the rate of price increase and the volume of bullion imported into Europe. Drawing from the German case, Jack A. Goldstone suggested certain improvements to the equation MV equal to PT by stating that between 1500 and 1650, the population active in the market rose by a factor of 3 or slightly more, and the overall population doubled. This should be multiplied by 50 to 75% increase in market participation. The ratio of VYQ in the monetary equation P equal to mv by q could also have increased by a factor of 3 or more because V grows as the square of population, while in the same period Q grew linearly or slightly less. As this population growth induced velocity effect would roughly triple the impact of any increase in money supplies on prices, the population velocity mechanism was probably the key factor during the price revolution. This population velocity model, derived from the network theory according to Goldstone, has a force to account for the magnitude of inflation during the price revolution. Writers such as Miskimin and R.S. Lopez have accepted the role of American bullion in causing price revolution in a general sense. Citing the mercantilists' obsession with bullion, Miskimin suggests that the inflow of precious metals would probably have set men and resources to work and at the same time tended to increase the funds available for government finance, thereby lowering the cost of fighting wars. He also supports the view of Hamilton on the slow rate of inflation till the first quarter of the 16th century and feels that the economic growth from 1465 till the period of the Reformation was a process of slow recovery. Ralph Davis draws attention to the unevenness of the price rise between different categories of products, showing the consistent patterns, with corn leading the way while the prices of industrial goods seem to have risen but more slowly. If the increase in prices was caused by the supply of money, the prices of all the commodities would have risen evenly. According to C.M. Cipolla, the highest average price increase in Italy took place between 1552 and 1560, when the prices rose on an average of 5.2% annually, while the influx of the American silver affected Italy only after the 16th century. The reason for the price rise before that period was the restoration of peace after a prolonged war from 1494, which was one of the chief causes of the price increase. The most important reason for the rise of Italian prices prior to 1570 was the country's work of reconstruction after the war. Cipolla is skeptical of the term price revolution, but he agrees that the American silver bullion inflow created a floor below which the price could no longer fall in the long phases of depression. Michael Marino suggests that the wheat prices rose or fell in direct response to the harvest situation. The demographic explanation has been provided as an alternative to the quantity theory of money. Scholars like Peter Creed and Ralph Davis suggest that the growth of money in circulation is, in conditions of economic expansions, more probably a reflection of expansion than its cause. It is therefore likely that other non-monetary factors unleashed the price revolution, and the Spanish silver only provided a secondary role. The real cause, according to them, is to be located in demographic factor. The period after the second half of the 15th century experienced a steady increase in the European population. It was accompanied by a steady rise in urbanization, leading to people moving to urban centers. The rise in population created greater demand for food, fuel, and clothing. This growing demand and an inadequate supply of food grains explain the phenomenon of price increase of agricultural product, in which corn led the way. It also explains why the prices of manufactured commodities did not increase in the same proportion. The consequences of inflation are the subject of a lively debate also. It has been suggested that the price revolution affected the whole of Europe and had important social repercussions. At the same time, it should be noted that its impact was not uniform but varied in different regions. Hamilton is of the view that during the price revolution, wages lagged behind prices, causing profit inflation. The increase of profits stimulated business and capital investments and contributed to the capitalist development and economic prosperity. J. M. Keynes not only supported this view but also argued that there was an extraordinary correspondence between the period of profit inflation and profit deflation respectively, with those of national rise and decline in the case of France, England, and Spain. There are many others who argue that the added bullion contributed much to the use of money. It gave greater mobility of capital, encouraged investments, promoted market activities, and resulted in division of labor. J. U. Neff and David Felix do not subscribe to the views of Hamilton and deny that profit inflation automatically contributes to capital formation. Felix also points out that there was no clear sign of profit inflation as suggested by Hamilton and Keynes. Some scholars have tried to explore and analyze the relationship between prices and wages. Schleicher von Warth prepared a series of drafts pertaining to the prices of cereals, population growth, and the levels of real wages. In his argument, he tries to establish that fluctuation in population exert a strong influence on consumption and thereby affect the course of prices. The price level and price movements, according to him, are also determined by the quantity of money and the rate of its circulation. Historians generally agree that the social consequences of the 16th century inflation were immense. Prices went up faster than the wages, generating social tensions in the urban population. It seriously affected the wage earners and salaried sections in the towns. Besides, the price rise generally increased the costs of administration and created serious problems for many rulers. Many historians believed that the price revolution provided a major incentive to economic transformation in Western Europe and resulted in partial collapse of the manorial system of agriculture. It was accompanied by significant social changes. It did not affect all market goods uniformly, but it brought about major changes in the economic relationship between classes and individuals. The inflation of the 16th century brought about a major redistribution of income among the classes and thereby widened the gaps between regions and countries. It is true that not all people were directly affected by price rise. The long-distance trade in food items provided profit to the middlemen or to those sections that controlled this trade. Usually it was favorable to the agriculturalists because price rise was the greatest in agricultural products. In many parts of Western Europe, the number of landless population increased because of evictions by the landlord. Thus, the price revolution set in motion a series of economic and social changes throughout Europe. On the extreme, it contributed to the commercialization of agriculture, expansion of market structure, and promoted manufacturing activities, thereby breaking manorial hold over land. as it happened in some parts of Western Europe. On the other extreme, it strengthened the control of the nobility over land and expanded serfdom and feudal order in Central and Eastern Europe. This is the end of our today's discussion. Subscribe our channel, like our video and comment. Listen to our podcast episodes. Follow our official Facebook page, Twitter handle and Instagram. For any query, feel free to mail us. For details, see the description.